So I'm back. I was grading papers all of last week, so I disappeared. But I got news for you, and not necessarily good news. Sorry, I got to be honest when I do this. First thing I'm going to focus on is this bond that the Trump administration has issued against two countries for now, requiring them to pay a $15,000 bond to get in. Now, the reality is, even let's say, and I know they're looking at flawed data because from what I read, the reality is visa overstays are less than 2%. So it's really not a big issue. My concern, like always, is a snowball effect. So you have these two countries, but guess what? Other countries are going to say, probably I don't want to go there. Look what's going on with now. Some people have to pay $15,000. They're looking into your social media posts to see if you should be granted a visa. But go beyond that. I've written about it. It's well documented how they were checking even lawyers' cell phones when they come in through Customs Border Patrol to see their social media posts and everything else. Besides the First Amendment issues involved, even though that kind of disappears, as you're coming into the country, the reality is you're checking the cell phones of U.S. citizens. So what they say or think should be 100% irrelevant. But that's part of the cause of why we're seeing less tourist revenue dollars coming in. The reality is, I knew Miami was going to get hit hard. I knew Naples, which is out west, was going to get hit hard. That's been proven because guess what? A lot of Canadians go down there and stay there all the way up to I think March 1st is when they return back to Canada. But Naples could be a ghost town for 6 months out of the year, except for October through March when the snowbirds are there. And so there's less tourism because there's less travel to Las Vegas. Las Vegas, I posted about that about a week or two ago, 66% occupancy rate. I mentioned how no tips sounds great for those who are in the service industry, but if you're not getting tipped, it doesn't really matter at that point. And they're getting hit hard as well. Why? Because Canadians are about approximately 30%. But it's not stopped at Canadians, and let's not stop. New York is also. Just in general, tourism is going to go down. Why? Well, again, you know, to go through the trouble of having to scrub your social media posts just to come in here and visit the country. That's nonsense, right? We'll check you at the border. That's North Korea type vibes, right? Russia type vibes. But on top of that, what if there are no issues? What if you're not on social media? What if you don't care about any of this stuff? What if you're completely non-partisan, non-political? You could care less. You don't even know what's going on. Why run the risk that you're confused with person A and you end up in alligator Alcatraz? Why would you voluntarily subject yourself to that? So it's going to have a snowball effect, just like education. I've talked about that endless times. Federal funding from the Department of Education amounts to approximately 11% on average per school district. When you're losing $11 out of every $100 in that school district, you're going to see problems in that district, in that city, in that county. They're either going to raise taxes to make up the difference, or there has to be 11% in cuts. That's it. Those are the only two options, right? Schools, all these attacks on these universities. University of Florida alone, not too far from here, maybe 60, 70 miles away from me, they produce 14 billion to the state of Florida's economy. Think about that. University of Florida is, I would say, the whole city of Gainesville is University of Florida. All the jobs that produce, the tax revenue that produces. You have all the students that come in from other countries or other states that are staying there, renting out apartments. Snowball effect, billions of dollars. So that's going to get hit hard too. But now that we're on the topic of students, let's talk about student loans. This has been an issue since I first started teaching 13 years ago. I was on this issue of student loans. It is 1.3 trillion, only outdone by car loans and mortgages. Here's the magical number. 13% of student loans are past 90 days. So the serious delinquency, when they start talking about lawsuit, garnishing your wages and everything else. It hasn't been that high since I think, oh my God, going back what? 2003, if I remember correctly. I have to fact check myself on that one. What happens when they garnish your wages? Let's say your average is anywhere from 15 to 25%, depending on the state you're in. That's 15, 25% less coming in. You have to make that up somehow. If not, you run the risk of losing your car, losing your apartment, certain utilities, cut the internet, whatever you have to do. And again, the snowball effect of that. How are we going to make up that difference? That's 25% less going into the local economy, whether it's stopping at your local coffee shop or whatever it is that you like to do. If you live down in Miami, that's less money available to go hang out on South Beach. It's all a snowball effect. And what's even worse about this is a lot of it has been by mistake, but even if it's not a mistake, you're talking about losing 100 points on your credit score just like that. You can forget getting a car if you lose 100 points. If you're at 800, which I doubt, and you went to 700, you're good. You're surviving. But if you're at 725, which isn't too shabby, I was at 734 as of last week. Now you're at 634. Yeah, they're going to jack up the interest rates on you. They're going to require a bigger deposit, which means you may not be able to get that car. You may not be able to move into another neighborhood. Maybe you wanted a better apartment or a better neighborhood. You can forget that with a 634 beacon. What if you're at 675? Now you're at 575. You might as well, those are bankruptcy type credit scores. So you can see the effect that that's going to have long term in the economy. But here's the big one. Every economist has been afraid of stagflation. They've been talking about it since President Trump first took office. The problem is everyone's saying we're heading towards a recession. We don't have to worry about stagflation. Not yet, not yet. Well, guess what? Bank of America is saying the complete opposite. They're saying everyone is confusing the numbers. All the economists, all the global financial firms are confusing recession figures with figures related to stagflation. Now, one indicator that I did post a while back ago, I did a video and a blog post on that said there is one indicator of recession that has been so far right 100% of the time. And that is when people believe 30% or more believe that there's going to be less jobs available moving forward. Apparently, that has always resulted in a recession when people have that mindset. So think about how interesting you have all these figures, but there's that one figure of how people perceive the economy, right? 70% of our GDP is consumption. So that's very important. But here's the other issue. Um, Stagflation. How did we get there? Well, this is what Bank of America is saying. Bank of America is saying, number one, immigration policies. That 200 and I think 85,000 jobs that were revised is the second largest in history when we were not in a time of recession. So think about how powerful, what a boom, what a bam that was with those numbers being second largest in our history, right? Now, here's the problem. Why is that happening? What is happening to the labor force? Immigration. And so I've been saying from day one, for those of you that think the economy is not going to get damaged because of immigration, you're being extremely naive and do not understand how these things work. Go ahead, get out Aragua out of here. No one's got an issue with that. But when you're picking up a landscaper who's been here for 30 years with three kids who are in the Marines, that's a problem. Not only has that stalled the economy in California, but you see people are taking less steps. So, for example, if for 30 years you've been in this country, maybe you had a misdemeanor trespassing, a BS charge 25 years ago, you were still going out to your restaurant, hanging out, having coffee with your friends. You're not doing that now. You're afraid to get picked up. I saw a video of someone who was a U.S. citizen who went to, I forgot why he was in that area, but they were looking for campsites and the police stopped them and then they detained them for hours and everything else. And the police is talking reasonable suspicion. And I posted on the video, said, that's not even reasonable suspicion. The police officer was saying that. It was beyond a loose interpretation. We'll get into that some other day. If someone wants me to do a video on that, I will. Just post it in the comments. But you're just targeting just about everybody, which goes back to not only the tourism. Why would you come when you can get targeted and thrown in there because some clown who's incompetent from ICE doesn't know what reasonable suspicion is or got the wrong guy? You know, many times there's been videos where I saw one video. One guy was saying that's not me, and after a couple of hours, same thing goes. Look at the tattoos. You don't have these tattoos, whatever the tattoos were, and they let him go based on that. So just you know, when you hire people in mass like that, there's always going to be incompetence. And there's always going to be people who don't know what they're doing and it's going to make the situation worse. But tie that into stagflation. With such a huge drop in immigration, service industry, right? Hotels, landscaping, all those types of jobs that immigrants do, farming. We had the labor force brakes have been hit. And so Bank of America is saying when you tie that in, and you tie that in with the tariffs. Yes, tariffs are bad. People still want to argue that. They still on my LinkedIn page saying I'm wrong and all that, but it's not me. It's every global economist. People still can't get past this simple fact. Do I have anything here? I don't have anything here. Let me show you this little piece of rubber thing. If this was $1 and now it's $1.15 because of a tariff, you just paid 15 cents more. The company is not going to eat 100% of of this import tax on this little rubber thing. If not, they're going to go out of business when they're bringing in millions of these things. They're going to pass that on to you. And I've said over and over again, you're going to feel it little by little. You're going to get nickel and dime to death. $2 more here, $5 over there. There's no denying your budget's going to increase. The Yale Budget Lab, I think, is saying $2,400 per household is what all these tariffs are going to cost us. I can go through the full list. Ford, 2.8 billion loss. I think Stellantis, which is Dodge and Ram, 1.4 billion if I remember correctly. Volkswagen, another billion. Why? Because tariffs are getting nailed as well with the steel industry. But we have other stuff like tomatoes from Mexico. We just added a 15% tariff to that about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I posted about that. 50% tariff from Brazil because President Trump isn't happy with Bolsonaro being prosecuted, the Trump of the tropics, for starting his own J6. That's what tariffs do. They increase prices. And Bank of America is saying the tariffs are increasing. Besides the fact I mentioned Bolsonaro because the tariffs sometimes are tied into zero logic, like the prosecution of a foreign government. There's no logic for this country to get involved. Imagine if other countries start doing that. Yeah, I can't believe you're prosecuting that guy. Here's a tariff. That would make no sense. But that's exactly what's happening with Brazil. Now, when you add that up, when you add the immigration net negative, basically, I think it's already been proven at. So less people are coming in. Guess what that does to the local economy? You add the tariffs. What does that do to the local economy? Now, here's a simple fact that for some reason, the Trump administration or other people that are supportive of these hardline immigration policies, when you're getting rid of people that really, you know, what's the big deal? They've been here for 30 years and they're working and they're hustling to make a few bucks. What town produces more revenue? My hometown of Miami or the town of 100 people wherever? The answer is simple, right? Miami. Why? Let's say Miami is 1/4 of the size of this town. Why is Miami producing more revenue? More people. That's how simple it is. The more people, the more revenue. The less people, the less revenue. The smaller the tax base. That money has to come from somewhere. So if even a town of 100 people that has 100 people contributing in taxes to the local economy, if you get rid of 20% of them, 80% are now there. So 80 people. Those 80 people have to spend what the other 20 that are now gone doing. It's no different in a large town. If you lose 100,000 people, whether because of immigration, going to other states, other towns, or other countries. I read an article about all the people heading off to Spain. That's going to decrease the tax base and the revenue. And so these immigration policies have been saying from day one, this is exactly what was going to happen. And even worse, I tied it into my pond that I still haven't finished. But I posted a video saying, here's my pond, and the water wasn't circulating because what I had before broke. I had to buy another aerator. But if the water isn't circulating, it creates algae, right? And if money isn't circulating, guess what? You feel in the local economy, you start heading towards recession. And now Bank of America is the first one to come out and say, this ain't no recession. This is stagflation. And if there's something that the economists fear, it is stagflation. And Bank of America is saying those two factors, the tariffs and the reduction in the workforce, is going to be a major, major problem. The predictions continue recession all the way up through the end of this year, if not the beginning of next. But stagflation, That's a whole other level. So be prepared, be informed, know what's going on in your economy, your business, AI, all these things, how it can affect you, and adapt accordingly. All right. Take care, everybody. Any questions or comments, post them in the comment section below.